Okay.
afternoon, Bradley.
Good
Sorry,
afternoon, Francis. Goeiedag.
sorry for all the stress just to get connected. I want to introduce you to. Firstly, I want to introduce to the third year strategic communication students Bradley van Sitters, which I just met for the first time, but which I know a bit about because it's legendary what you have done and what you're doing. And you have you have absolutely my respect because, as I understand, you are working towards helping a language that is busy getting ignored to be used more. And the fact that you're opening this language up for other users, that it's not only for people who are mother tongue users to the language. So absolutely respect. Thank you so much for being here.
Francis, good day. And it's a great honor for me to be here also. And thank you for the invitation. It really warms my heart to get the invitation of such a nature. And it's 2 days before Mother Tongue Day, International Mother Tongue
Yes.
Day. So I think it's very appropriate and that we have this type of conversation. And thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. I'm very humbled. I'm a very, very easygoing type of person. So I'm always a little bit overwhelmed. It sounds like you're talking about someone else when you said all of those things. But I understand you definitely speaking about the 2019 Sona that I was there. It was some point very controversial,
I
but
saw that.
all in all, I think it was really like um, uh, challenging a lot of the set mindsets. It was a way of a challenge in a way, but it was also for myself. It was long overdue that the world hears this language that very few people actually understand in the context of South Africa,
Yeah.
because it's a language of Eurasia, because of the linguicide and all the other things that went on in our history. The history is well known in South Africa. So just at the moment, a lot of my work over the last 20 years, it feels, has actually gone into focusing on promoting, preserving, safeguarding, and also creating some conditions for the use of an endangered language in the scope of South Africa. So once again, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very excited to share some of my feelings and some of my thoughts, some of my own research work, just to share broadly. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you
Thank you.
again,
So,
Rula.
thank you. No, thank you. So, Bradley, maybe just to put the students in the picture, because I do not know they know. I don't think most of them will know about the Sona 2019, or maybe they do. Maybe our students are woke enough that they actually listen to the Sona speeches in the opening. Don't you want to just tell us the story of how that started and how you got to be there? Don't you want to maybe start there? Because I think that is maybe um, within social media, maybe the most famous thing that you've done, not necessarily the most important. I think there are many more important moments. But maybe if you want to just tell us.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I'll say all of this happened at a very actually interesting point, because it was in the backdrop. UCT launched their first program for Khoekhoegowab, for Khoikhoi language, at the same time that all of this was happening. So it was quite interesting because it was the International Mother Tongue Year from UNESCO. 2019 was that International Mother Tongue Year. So it was quite profound that a lot of things happened that year in 2019. So at the same time and in the backdrop, UCT, University of Cape Town, just launched the first official Khoekhoegowab program. And Khoekhoegowab means language of the Khoikhoi, right? So it was the first launch of the program, the language program for beginners. I'm part of that program. I'm actually currently the convener. At the time in 2019, I worked closely with a Namibian correspondent, Dorothea Davids. So what actually happened was, so around that same time frame, I got an invitation uh, from, very strangely, from the parliament actually,
Sure.
to be part of, to actually to do the Sona. And to give you some indication, there was quite varied type of responses. Some responses said, Bradley, please go. It will be a great honor to hear Khoikhoi Gova, Khoikhoi language spoken, such a platform, because it's the first time ever. And then there were also some I would say naysayers that said, no, Bradley, that's in political environment. There's a lot of politics involved in there, and you should keep the culture outside the political arena. So there was a lot of comments that I heard from coming from all different fields, from even from abroad. And then actually what happened, and this is a little bit of a story here, Rula. So
I
this is
love
something that
it.
you probably,
I love it
something that's,
because I just want to say the previous brief or class that I did Monday last to my students was about how serendipity and these lucky chances that come our way actually enable us, if we are in the moment and we can receive them and use them, that they in a way helping us to become more and to live purposefully and make life better, not only for people around us, for the community. So for me, you telling this story is like perfect. Right.
beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so it's a bit of a story. So what happened was I was in two worlds, literally, because I had people that say that was for it and people say that was against it. So I literally didn't know what to do. Still on the day. And what happened was they actually asked me 2 days before the Sona to go in to get my certification. So I went for my certification, and for some reason or another, I and there's a little bit of thing to it. They didn't want to give me a certificate, a certification to attend the Sona,
Oh my
and it's a little bit of
goodness.
a story to it because, and I'll be open with it. There's nothing I don't feel I can
It's
hide
all good.
anything because this is all in the public domain in any way. So I was denied access to the Sona based on my record. I was arrested many years ago for the possession of
Half dope.
a sacred medicine, which
Which
which we
is,
use. It's medicine, and it's actually something that is part of our cultural practices, even of our history. So I was arrested
and
years
the
ago.
world is waking up to that actually.
Yeah, and there's been amazing developments in it because I know the laws around it has eased up,
Mm.
and yeah, so there's a lot of work done around it. So what happened was 2019, when I went for my certification, they said no, we can't allow you to be in the same presence along with these other, like statesmen and all like politicians. Anyway, so what happened was then I thought, okay, I guess that's the answer. Then I'm not gonna go. So on the day of the Sona, I was literally sitting here because I was busy doing my research. And just to give you a footnote, I was accepted by the University of Cape Town to do my master's. So I'm currently busy with my master's degree. It's an interdisciplinary research that I'm doing, but focusing on Khoikhoi language and also its entanglement with Afrikaans, with Xhosa, with Sotho, with
Yes.
Zulu, with a lot of other languages that it rubs shoulders with, given the closeness of other language. Uh, but anyway, so I was busy doing my research at the time, sitting in my home. Where I'm sitting, I'm literally sitting in my house now in my room. So I was sitting here, knock on the door, and I didn't even open it. Some of my family members opened the door, and lo, lo and behold, who comes entering in my little, because I stay in a shack here in the back of the house, in the yard, and Cecil Lefleur, who was actually the head of the Khoisan NKC, National Khoisan Council. He comes walking into my shack, or in my shed. I would say shed where I stay, and yeah, and I was a little bit like dumbstruck because I didn't
Yes.
quite expect Cecil Lefleur to walk into my room, very
And you
humble
didn't
place.
know him before. You haven't
I
met
knew,
him before.
obviously, I've
You
never
know
met
of
him
him.
before.
Ah,
I've never met him before, but I know of Susloke. He's well known
yes.
in the
Yeah.
circles because he heads the NKC, National Khoisan Council. So, so yeah, and then his words to me was, "The world waits. The world awaits you." And then he said, "It's a call of duty." it's your call of duty where you called by your ancestors to stand in that place and to make the world hear Khoi Khoi Gova, to hear Khoi Khoi language, a language of linguicide, erased language in the context of South Africa, well, in the context of Cape Town. So that is a little bit of history. And then immediately he said, "Get yourself ready, let's go." So
So,
that was my sign. That was my sign. And then afterwards, as just reflection again, it was ancestral workings. This was all ancestral workings because I do actually I am of the cosmology where I know that we are actually living like in not only this current, this present tense. Um, it's I see a different, a non-linear approach to time. So I feel there was definitely workings from the ancestors, even from people that was from the future, to influence this moment. So that was my moment. Um, so
the
yeah,
world
it was
awaits.
the world awaits, and so there we go. I went, and lo and behold, I did my part, and I
Just
started
tell me,
out. Yeah,
how did he say it? First, how could you, did he speak in, I can't pronounce it correctly, Koi Koi Kuap? Am I saying it correct?
you're
Did
saying
he
it right.
speak to you in Koi Koi Kuap, or did he speak in English or in Afrikaans, or how did he say? What were his words exactly?
He spoke to me in. He didn't speak in Kwekegova. Okay, he spoke to me in Afrikaans and in English, and I could see actually just by the way that he spoke to me, he was also moved. You see, so something was happening with him also. I felt he was very charged. He was highly charged in himself, and he was actually like he was sent as a man on a mission, and his mission was to come get the 2019 Imbongi, which is me.
That is
So
beautiful. Okay.
it was quite a moment, and I remember there was various like things that happened before, and it was like media came and we had to do like a run through, and I actually had a consultant because the whole idea about a praise singing. So I was like, I'm gonna do something different than a praise singing, and they're like, okay, well, you do what you want to. So I did, instead of doing a praise singing for the president, I made a prayer, just a prayer. So all of that was actually just like a prayer to and the prayer was actually for um, for guiding South Africa, and a lot of things what I said. And when I went to Namibia after the Sona, I went in 2019. I went to Namibia because that's the community in a place called Korigu Ra'a Abes, which means the drinking place of the zebras. It's they call it Kagatsus or Gibeon between Keetmanshoop and Marienthal. So I went to that community because that is the first community that introduced this language to me, and they taught me. And they asked me, Bradley, can you please recall what you said at the sauna? And then, and it was strange because I was saying it was all prayers. It was all prayers. And I started out with Guagaratsi, Daragangansi, Neches Tisak Haruma, O Nesine, Koesna, Huidare. And and I went on. And after my first sentence, I heard the people started saying it with me. And the people there, because it is a prayer that is a prayer that is common to the people. They know these prayers. So and I was moved that they were saying it with me, and then there was a prayer that I said also, the Sida Itse, so kwatse abotse Sida the Ngown Itse, Sida Itse. Now that the Sida Itse to kwatse is also a prayer, and my first teacher in Kwekugova in Nama, Mr. Pedro, and I call him Meester Pedro Donsa. Now, Pedro Donsap, he taught me that prayer, and it literally means our Father. And it actually it's a reflection even to ancestral father. You see, so it was something that was beyond. It was actually beyond the senses. It was literally like connecting with extrasensory, making deep extrasensory connections in that moment. I was also moved also because Cabo. who is
Ah, I know
the
it.
person that coined Cabo. Yeah, you know Cabo. So
Yes,
he
yes.
was a visionary. He was a linguist. He was someone that very profound also. And then he's also, and then I felt a deep spirit. I felt like Cabo spirit came over me in that moment. Because I'll be honest with you, I actually viewed myself. I was there in my physical form, but somehow I was viewing everything from outside myself. You
Mm,
understand? So there was something
yes.
quite powerful that happened, and it was for myself. It was really uh, ancestral workings, all in all. So yeah, no,
Mm,
I felt quite moved by it, and I'm a third language Khoikhoi speaker. So obviously, there's a lot of things that I'm not afforded, like the first language. That link to a first language and everything. So as a third language speaker, obviously, there's a lot of things that that is not like as iemand Afrikaans praat, but nog
ja,
geleer het van ander plek kom, ek gaan 'n bietjie anders klink, like any other language. So obviously,
natuurlijk.
those were the type of things that I was dealing with. For me, the interesting thing was even with afterwards was I was actually telling the world that the new speakers of Khoikhoi will develop a new dialect. And that was for me a profound moment. I was like, oh
Mm,
my goodness. I didn't quite actually think about it before the time. But while I was doing all of that, I was like, this is actually what's happening. With the in Western Cape and also in other parts of Africa, this growing interest into safeguard this jewel of a language, this treasure, a linguistic treasure for all the world. Now, a little bit something, Rula. I was in 2011, I went to the University of Namibia and I went to study Kwekagova at university level. My teacher was Dr. Levi Namasep. When I came back from there, I started teaching, like very informally at the libraries, even at the Castle of Good Hope. I started teaching it for people that was interested. My surprise was people came from all over, different backgrounds. We had the locals from the Cape Flats, the people from the Cape Flats that came in numbers, which was amazing. Then there was also people that came from abroad. These were people that was in Cape Town at the time, heard of it, and thought they interested. We had a Belgian, we had American, African American. We also had a Japanese lady. Now the Japanese lady said something very startling. She said, Bradley, this is connecting us to early human memory. And that was for me like something that I actually didn't quite take in consideration. She's like, because of the anciency, because the language has been around for so long, right?
mm,
It actually connects. It's like a language connecting the whole world, right? It's not only specifically for people that is in the link to the culture, but it was something that is beyond that and it connected to human memory. Now, this took me by
dat
surprise and
was
by storm, and I was like, "Wow, connecting to human memory." So that theme, I started exploring. So now, in a lot of the work now, we had like at UCT, we had people from all over the world. The majority of people, I have to be honest, is from people that's connected to the culture, right?
yes.
And the people that firsthand experience this linguicide, the language loss. And a lot of my research and writings goes on um, language loss. And there's a huge thing that happens with that when you're not able to speak your ancestral mother tongue. So that was interesting for me.
Mm,
So then that connected with that also was this broader themes that was connecting into human memory. So we at UCT, we some of the students that I can actually say was also people from other countries on the continent. I have a Somalian student, which was amazing, doing
shoo.
amazing with Somalian. We had people from Europe. Okay, there was a German. There was a two people. They were studying linguistics. They are studying at UCT linguistics from Turkey. We had a German. I think I'd mentioned a German. So the interest was vast. Also,
Ja.
Xhosa speakers. There was a Xhosa speaker, a Sotho speaker also, interested in the language, and also connecting the similarities because obviously the clicks are similar. As a similar system of clicks. In fact, with Goba, we have more clicks and also a little bit more grammatical complexities involved with the clicks that I found. So there was for myself, yeah, I found that was quite powerful moment for myself also to see that the language is also reaching out globally. And Arula, I have to tell you, after the Sona, let's bring it back to the Sona. I had people uh, from all over the world sending me messages, all over the world. That was even Mandela's daughter that actually passed away, unfortunately. At the
Yeah.
time, she sent me a message and she said, I don't know what you said, but I felt something in that moment. And that was a feeling of ancestors you were conveying a message from the ancestral world.
Mm.
So that was to be very powerful, Rula. Thank you. I
And
don't know, I can talk more.
no, no. What you're saying is now I'm just thinking of, and it's we speak of serendipity, but for me, serendipity has to do with the bigger purpose, and truly the ancestors, the gods, whatever, whoever people believe in, that actually work through us. So I just want to mention how interesting it is that I that I was connected with you to you via Sylvia, because before Prof. Sylvia came to UJ, um, and it was, I think, in 2017, I was so lucky that a book that I wrote received the Asala Award. And at the Sala event, um, there was the other big award was actually for those 5 writers. um Cabo, I don't know how to pronounce their names, but
Cabo.
yes.
Got that.
So but so what I did is you had to prepare a 1 minute speech. So I prepared a 1 minute speech telling one of the stories of Cabo,
Cabo.
about when you and it was a story about the leopard who sits in the tree. It's still one of my favorite stories I've ever heard. A leopard sits in a tree and experiences life, and then she knows she must go home because her children are waiting. So she takes off her skin, and it's like a petticoat, and she goes back as a human. And I told that story because for me, receiving the Sala was maybe the most important connection that I ever felt with everybody in South Africa. Because here I'm at the Sala, and all the languages of our country are on it. There are people from all different cultures. Um, the voices are listened to. There was somebody who started his speech with a praise song, the name praise singing. They were, and I felt that I can speak even though I'm Afrikaans, and the language I speak comes from the language of apartheid. Even I have a space there. Sello Duiker, I don't know if you know his writings, but Sello Duiker was my student years ago, 2 years before he passed away. And his parents were there, and I met them for the first time. So when I told the story of Thabo, it felt as if Thabo is allowing me, as an Afrikaner who's white, to be in this space. I am allowed to be because I have this, my language, Afrikaans, comes from this continent. But bigger than this language is the spirit of this continent and where we stay. And that comes from a language that is not even spoken anymore. Like what you're saying, exactly what you're saying, language side, you call it. Am I right?
Linguicide.
Linguicide.
Linguist. Yeah.
So when I met Sylvia, and she told me about her book. I'm like, I know, I know
It's
who the
so
Kum
cool.
is. I know the Kum means story. And I know of this character, this person who was inspired to walk and tell the stories of the people. And he had the prophecy that he would be able to save people, the world, through a language that we don't know anymore now, but had been written up, praise God. And now, Sylvia connected me to you, and here you're telling the same story in different words, but it's this thing of we can take off our leopard skin and we can put on a skin of another world, another language, another time, and we are connected then to everybody, and this is through language.
Powerful. Powerful. No, language is for me something that is otherworldly. And I think it's often neglected. It's a very neglected aspect. And I was years back, I was making, when I just started at Rula on this quest, I was saying there was a lot of like, media around saving the rhino, like the
Yes.
white rhino, and I know saving the blue whale and all of that, like all of these endangered animal species. So then it came to me, and I was like, why aren't we saving a language?
Mm.
Uh, and and because at the time in 2011, I was fortunate enough, Rula, to be part of a research team with Dr. Menon Duplessis, Levi Namasib, Dr. Levi Namasib, Nicholas Fredericks, and Charles Heeman, and myself. We went to find the last speakers of Hora. Now, Hora was a language, Kurana was a language that was actually most close of all the dialects of Kwekwe, of the Proto Kwekwe Khoikhoi language. It's the one dialect that was closest to the dialect spoken in in Cape Town. And I mentioned the name Khoikhoi because in my
Yes.
own journey, that is one of the names that I found through oral history when I went to Namibia in that place called Korigura Abes. I found people that said it's not Cape Town. When we lived there, because there was migrations out of the Cape also of people that lived here, and then they said when we lived there, it didn't have the name Cape Town yet. So in the oldest memory to this place was linked to this name. Cape actually means veiled in clouds, or surrounded by clouds, or covered in clouds. Now that's the same connotations that we have with the tablecloth. We call
Yes.
it's like this is the tafeldoek, but the tablecloth has an older memory actually, and that is the memory of uh truth pipe. Now truth pipe is for myself in my own research. It's the oldest memory of this place, and I often say Rula, it's a place where the colonial bomb actually landed. So for me, culturally, it's for me a place of worst cultural devastation, and
Mm.
that's why the language, the dialect spoken in this part has been lost. So we are relying heavily on the strains that have survived the
Yeah.
linguicide, and those strains are found among the Nama people. And what they have done in the context of Little Namakwa, you still find speakers also in a place called Karahais. Karahais, you know it as Uppington, and there's still
Is it?
community and Rimfasmark that speak Nama. So they created a standardized version because there's various dialects of it still
Yes.
spoken among the Krom, even the Damara people, and then the Nama people. So they created this term Kwekwegovap, and and we've actually adopted that term because of the linguicide that the Khoikhoi people experienced this side, the language loss. In that way, also the Khoikhoi language was
Oops.
actually answering a prayer, so that there is still a connection being made linguistically, and through the linguistic connection, also deep cultural and even a connection with identity, even with the like a sense of a place, and that is actually tied into a lot of other things, even like names of places. There's so
Yes.
many.
So that's your other research that I've looked at. You did the study on the names of places. Uh, Tell us more, please.
Amazing. So, like I mentioned, it started out as a from oral history. I literally went to the old people, sat at their feet, and just listened to them. And they started speaking about these old names. And one of the names, the first name was Cape Town, because they literally asked me where I was from, and I said Cape Town, and they said, no, that's not the name of that place. So they were,
I love
so they
it.
said, oh yeah, yeah, that's a name that you call it now, but we know it as we Cape. So then there was and then I was like, oh my goodness, so it opened up a whole gaze of thought, and I was like, oh, so there's other places that has other names, but uh we are so familiar with the name. So like for instance, a place that I like to say Kmoes. You know the place Kmoes. Now
Kaimus.
Kmoes, yeah. So in the language in Khoekhoegova, K means big or many, big. Moes is your eye. It literally means eye.
Big eye. Big eye.
Groot oog. So big eye. So if you've been to Kmoes, there's like a hill or mountain right there, right? If you're coming from Springbok side,
Uh-huh.
you driving from Springbok side, then when I went there, because I was part of the Indigenous Liberation Walk, and literally walked the distance, right? We walked into Kmoes, and then they said on the mountain there's a cave, and that the mountain and the place is actually called for the cave. Hulle sê die oog wat ver sien, the eye that sees far. So Kmoes literally means the big eye.
Shoo.
You see, so there's
Shoo.
even a Priska, like a place Priska. You know Priska, right?
Uh-huh.
So Piri, it's a goat. Piri, Piri.
Mm-hmm.
Ka relates to it that disappeared. So it's connecting us to. It says actually because the people were renowned spoorsnijers, they were renowned trackers. So in as they were tracking this goat, um, the track just disappeared. The spoor in it verdween, and it was so startling because there were no other tracks of like predators coming to, or so
Uh-huh.
the spoor did it verdween. So it was something. So that place, Priska, gets its name from that. It's the place where the spoor verdween it, the place where the tracks just disappeared of the goat. So it's like the goat that disappeared. So there's a lot of places, even a place like Liugamka. When I was going into that name, later on, I was quite fascinated. The word Gami, means lion.
Uh-huh.
So if you hear Liugam, then it's
It's
actually heard
it's lion, lion.
exactly. So you actually hear the Afrikaans version of it, Liu, and then Gam, meaning the Khoikhoi, the indigenous name for lion. So I found there was a duplication of sorts.
Huh.
So I find it quite interesting now. The doubling, and I call it the doubling of syllable double or word double, is something that is quite common. And I was interesting enough. I was at a conference years back, and there was an American guy. He was a linguist, and he heard me speak. And I was speaking about things like koi koi, and there's all like the word doubling, like chwa chwa meaning beginning. There's all this like word doublings you find in koi koi
Yes.
guap. Even the word koi koi, they have another for
Yeah.
example of it. So there's all these syllable double or word doubles, and I was playing around with that theme, and I was thinking about Bafana Bafana, because we don't even say Bafana, we say Bafana Bafana, so I was
Yeah.
extending it actually. So he put his hand up in the conference. I was like, okay, and then he said he was from the Bronx in the USA, and he was saying you would never hear the people say bling; they would say bling bling. Then he was saying,
Yes.
although they're speaking in the English language, but they're using some characteristics that was common to like African grammar of the word doubling or syllable doubling. So that was for me a fascinating aspect. So yeah, this whole thing about place names is something that I'm still basically diving into. It's a huge area. A lot of work has been done by Rapper and also by Ninaber, uh, historic books, and then they actually went into place names. I have a list of names that I have actually come across, and but for me it's also quite fascinating, Rula. A lot of common, even Afrikaans names like Vaal Rivier, Modderdam, Hartebees Rivier,
Yeah.
and Modder. So all of these like river names actually closely tied to the original Khoi name for it, because literally what the people did in the early days, they literally translated directly what the Khoi called it, what the locals called it, and what, not always though, not
Mm,
always, but in
mm.
many cases,
Yeah.
words, the original vernacular names were translated into Dutch, right, and later
Yes.
Afrikaans. So there's a lot of those happenings, and then also names of mountains are also quite interesting. So then the case went a little bit broader. So it's not only place names, but also names of rivers, mountains, and also regions, right? Areas. So
Namakwaland.
there we go, the Namaqualand, and it's quite interesting that you mentioned the Namaqualand because uh, part of the Namaqualand is in South Africa, Little Namaqualand, and other part, Greater Namaqualand, is in Namibia. So actually
Yes.
find that a nation states are dividing an ancestral land that was never actually divided. There were
Mm,
no division between the two. But now, because of the nation states development in our postmodern
mm.
environment today, we have the situation where people are literally different
Boxed in. People
citizens.
are
Yeah,
boxed
they're
in.
South Africa and in Namibia, but they are people, the Nama people, speaking Nama. So a lot of my research went also into a place called Richtersveld that I'm sure you know.
Mm.
And one of my favorite places there is Kubus. So there, Arula, I found speakers of Nama, beautiful, beautiful place. Uh, Kubdi is actually the original. Kubdi means the place of God. Kubus
Sure.
means round. Kubus means round, all right? And Kubdi means the plek van God, the place of God. So
Sure.
I found it quite profound. And they have a place called Lekkersing. Nice. Nice means Lekkersing.
This,
So,
but,
so,
but
so
it sounds
they
like
just,
nice.
yeah, nice actually means to sing, right? So, so there's quite an interesting deep connections. A lot of place names that we have in South Africa were directly translated from the regional language to early Dutch or the Dutch spoken at the time, and then now in Afrikaans. So we have those type of things. So, but it wasn't it wasn't something that happened throughout. So a lot of times, like other names were given, you know. But I found that was really fascinating. So place names is something that I find is you know it's I was even looking internationally what's happening in the international world, and I found that a lot of places were renamed their original pre-colonial names,
Mm.
if not so the pre-colonial names, the language spoken in the area, like in Australia, they've given actually certain reasons the names of that original people living in that
Yes.
area,
Yeah.
or the language of the people. So that was me also fascinating. Even in Canada, they made like even a word like Quebec. Quebec is actually a regional indigenous word in Canada. Uh, so I found that
Like,
was quite exciting, you know.
yeah. You remind me now. I have a I visited my mother in she was in America, and she fell ill and then she passed away there. But just before she passed away, I was lucky to go over to go and say goodbye to her, and I have a friend that I met when I lived in Taiwan, which is in the east, and he lives in Seattle. And Seattle, the name, is actually the name of the chief who was a First Nations person. I never know how to say it correctly. Um, and when the Americans came with, we're going to take the land and this is what we're going to do, he created this speech which says, oh, it is amazing. It's actually worthwhile just to go and research that speech. And it was translated into English. That's why we have it, where he says, "You say so if your God says this, because remember that taking the land had all to do with that type of colonialism had a lot to do with religion and the white." the white God, and he named it. He said, so if you say your God loves all people and that you are the children of your God, we must be adopted children. If you say you're going to take this land and you give me this promise, you must remember that the ancestors and the people who come after you will remember the promises you make. And most people don't even know that that name Seattle actually means the name of this person who made these speeches. And all the prophecies he actually had came true. So this, it's just absolutely amazing to speak to you and to hear how you, because what we're saying is, what is language? What is this mother tongue or the languages of the people? Because if we do not write isiZulu, if we do not allow for Tswana and the different languages of our country to be written, to be spoken, we are actually helping those languages to die. So a very big part, and the part of this brief that my students are getting to, is to do exactly what you've done, is to research the stories of people, to get indigenous knowledge, and to connect that with the languages of the people they speak, and to tell those stories. Because if you didn't do that prayer at the Sona, if you didn't if you didn't see, so if you were not open to the call, that moment wouldn't have happened. And it is part of the story of the languages, and not just one language, all the languages, in order, and it carries the identity of people. And you don't, like what you said, and I love what you said, you don't have to be of that people to be able to use that language. So yeah, no, it's absolutely fascinating. Tell us more about your multidisciplinary study. I also do I'm busy with a PhD multidisciplinary. So tell us more about how you're looking at it and what you're doing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I can't stop thanking you for inviting me for this exchange of thoughts. Thank you
No,
again.
I thank you.
No, and I look very. I'm an interrogator of sorts. So I like to interrogate themes, concepts, words. Even like necessarily people, but I like to interrogate like concepts, like an idea. Like for instance, let's take the word South Africa, right? So South Africa is a placing on a continent, right? But it's a name of a country. You don't find another country on the continent called East Africa
Mm-mm,
or
it's
West
an
Africa.
area. Mm.
Right. So for us specifically, South Africa is a geographic location on a continent, and it's a name. In fact, in my own research, you don't find any other country in the world that has a name that has specifically a location on a continent, right? So
Sure.
you get reasons, right? You don't get a country called a country, not a continent, called uh, South America. South America is the name of a continent, not the name of a specific country,
What about
right?
South Korea?
South Korea, Korea is not the name of the continent.
Oh, because it's a yeah, it's an island.
Yeah. So Korea is still reflecting, but so I was actually thinking, like, when Southwest Africa was the only other name that had
Yes.
this Southwest Africa, but when they became independent, they named them Namibia. It became Namibia. Even look at another name. Okay, so I'm like, now moving a little bit away from the idea, but and when we became democratic, I thought some part of me was still thinking, oh yeah, we're still waiting for a name change, right? Because Southwest Africa had a name change because the name itself was still tying it to some type of history.
Uh-huh.
Now, in the context of South Africa, it never really happened. We still
So
under the
yeah.
same name as South Africa, and I felt it was very in a way uncreative. It was very
Yeah,
uncreative because
it's a lost opportunity. It's UJ went through the same thing, our university, because it when it went from RAL to UJ, the fact that we could change the name, and I was involved with the names of the changes, the changes of the names of the residences and the manifestos and rebranding and relooking that people choose logos and slogans that fit the time and the people, and that doesn't
Exactly.
reflect a colonial white Afrikaans apartheid regime. So you are saying that it was a lost opportunity. We had to
No
actually,
problem.
because we're renaming all the towns. Why not
Yeah.
renaming the country?
Like
That's
like
interesting.
in a context of Rhodesia. Remember Rhodesia? You had Northern
Zimbabwe.
Rhodesia and Southern
Ah,
Zimbabwe and Zambia. So those were ancient
Swaziland.
Swaziland. Well, Swaziland, right? So what actually happened was the thinking came around this. Okay, names of places was to me very very fascinating. I even went to interrogate the word Africa, Rula,
Yeah.
because for me it's PC. It's politically correct. Africa, Africa, Africa. It's such a global politically
Mm,
correct term. A lot of people align themselves identity to
mm,
Africa,
mm.
or even in Afrika of
Yeah,
Afrikaans, even
Afrikaans.
Afrikaner, even
Yeah, I.
Afrikaner
Mm,
is a further extension of that whole theme of the political correctness of African or Africa. So I interrogated the word Africa for myself, and I went to several universities in South Africa, and I asked them, what language on Africa does the word Africa originate from? And in that language, what is its meaning? So, and then I found no one really could come back to say, like, no, it's from the Swahili or whatever. There were none connecting us to a language. I was looking into what language does the word Africa originate from? Is it on the continent? Is it a word actually that is born on the continent or not? So,
or is it maybe a title given to the continent because Africa means something else, and people said everybody on this continent, therefore, are Africans, and that what that word is. So, what did you find?
so, and I was actually quite quite amused by this. That no one could really give me answers. There were no one that said, "Okay, Bradley." And I went to several. I went to years back. I was part of a Indigenous Knowledge Systems retreat at the University of South Africa with Professor Catherine Adora Hopper. Amazing woman. She
Mm.
wrote a book, Thinking About Thoughts or Rethinking Your Thoughts. Amazing. So I was there, and a lot of other scholars from internationally were also there, and I was actually just probing this whole question of Africa. So obviously, I
Africa.
found older names for the continent, like Alkebalan was another older word.
Mm.
Even a word of Kush was also, and Ethiopia was also another name for the continent. So I was quite just opening up the gaze a little bit more, because it seems that we are very like sort of stuck to this political correctness of Africa. So I looked also Scipio Africanus. He was a Roman general at the time of Hannibal. So he defeated Hannibal, and then in honor of their war hero, they named the place that he conquered or expanded the Roman Empire at the time. They called it. They named it after the general's name, Scipio Africanus.
Oh
So
my goodness.
so there was quite interesting and startling discoveries that I made around just on names. So I was like, oh, then it went a bit deeper. Then I was like, okay. Then coming back to South Africa, then I was like looking at this whole linguistic entanglement that is there, and I was actually looking at linguistic cultural entanglement, and I call it rubbing off shoulders. So it's basically people that have engagement with each other in some way or another. So this was really fascinating. So I looked at some cultural practices that is performed by cultural groupings in southern Africa, and it was amazing. The stuff that I
Mm.
found was really, really amazing. So there is some cultural practices that's being performed by variable cultures, right? So I found that quite interesting, and I started making a thread through them. and to just connecting the dots. Now, in Afrikaans language, in Afrikaans, is a magdom. There is a enormity of words that's close related to Khoikhoi Govap, the Khoikhoi
Mm,
language.
yeah.
I've done a research on it. I've actually have some papers even on it. Even a word choose gro, vergraven.
Yeah.
Uh, there's so many words. Eina, uh,
Baya. Baya.
eh. Baya is actually a word similar like pisang that's actually coming from the
Malaysia, I
Sou-
think.
Southeast Asia. Yeah, come from
Yeah,
Southeast
yeah.
Asia. Because the way
Uh,
you can still find the word pisang still used today
yeah.
there by them. And Baya also is connected. Even the word buy in the Cape Flats, when we go to the shop, we say we was gaan na die buy to. Now that word
Ah,
buy, is,
Haribay. Yeah.
yeah, so the buy is actually the shop owner. He's a shop owner. We call him a buy.
Oh, it's
But
stunning.
there's a lot of residues. I call it linguistic residues that find its way into the Afrikaans language. A number of there was residues coming from the Southeast Asian slave trade. Okay, there were also words, obviously predominantly European words, even concept and themes, and then also from the Khoi people. There was a
Yes.
number of words that is actually connected to the people themselves. Even a word like and or and those were for me. Uh, those were my catalyst thinking. That just sparked a lot of other thinking, because we all use the word and Growing up in Cape Flats, I was told by older people, "Jy praat nie so met groot mense nie. Jy sê nie
Yes.
vir hulle nie en jy sê nie vir
Ah,
hulle nie." Because
as
it's
weird.
like a sign of disrespect.
Same to me.
But however, lo and behold, when I went to study at University of Namibia, they taught me that the word "e," we say "e" in the language, but commonly we say is actually a word meaning yes, and or he is a word, is an actual
Yes.
word in the language meaning no. So that was for me like, oh my goodness, that's like a moments of clarity, and I found that
Yes.
quite fascinating. So years back, not so long ago, I worked at the castle. The castle had a 360th year commemoration, and because I was like, the theme was we couldn't celebrate the castle. It wasn't a place of
Mhm.
celebration because of its history
Of
that's tied
course.
into it. Yeah. So we had a display of indigenous character before the castle. The whole theme was what was there before the castle, because it was a place of settlement. People lived there, literally
Yes.
on the beach, right? People, that was a beach. So in the center of was a pentagram, because the castle is a five-pointed star. So in the center of it is a well. It's a drinking well. It's closed up now. It's not, you can't even access it. It's like a wish. You go into make a wish there nowadays. People go and throw money in there. But so the whole idea that was what was there before the castle. So when we did that whole thinking, it really unpacked a lot of thought around the space. So while I was there, a woman from the Philippines came to me and said, because our project was called Abate. You know the word Abba, iman to piggyback.
Abba, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
So Abba is a Khoi word. It's a Khoi
what's
word.
it in pepper? It's pepper.
Pepper.
You pepper a baby in we call, I say in Afrikaans we say Abba as well, but in I think it is in Tswana we say pepper, where you
Pepper.
carry the
Okay.
baby. Yeah.
So I was quite interested when a lady came to me from the Philippines, and she said, "You know what? You use the word Abba. We have the same word for the same thing." That
Really?
was really amazing. So I was like, "Oh my goodness, there's something happening here."
Yeah.
Coincidence? I'm not sure, but there was something that was in a way otherworldly. Language is to me fascinating because it's a way of also, it's a science that's also connected to language, even the words that is used. There's even like some aspects of a language, like in the Chinese, in Mandarin. In China, the Mandarin language, they use a tonal structure, tonation. So it's this again, ah, ah, so it like sounds like music notes, right?
Yeah.
Like notes. Now in
It's a little,
Khoiku Guava, we have the same thing.
is
We have
it?
the same
How
thing.
many levels are there?
They are six levels. Like, so you have
Okay.
a standard, one up, one, and then there's variations. Ah, ah. So there
Yeah.
is various variations. So it's the same letter, So you write the letter A, but there's like accents and signs on top of the
Ah,
letter. So it shows you ah, ah. So it's there's about
but this is,
six, seven variations on
yeah, this
on the
is,
tonal structure. On
yeah,
so so that all of this actually was actually showing me something fascinating. Languages, even characteristics in languages, are connecting people
yeah,
all the globe. It's really connecting. And then
yeah.
coming back to South Africa, our past is really about keeping people up separate and apart from each other. Like that's part of the immediate or not so long history. But then I was looking into to seeing like we have a word in Afrikaans, boetie and sissy.
B,
Now and it's close as ubuti,
yeah,
usisi. Now in
yes.
Khoikhowaba, we also the same word, boetie rob and sissy ros. It's exactly the same thing.
Sissy Ross. Oh, it's
Sissy ros,
beautiful.
yeah. Sissy ros for sister and boetie rob for brother. We have a word like hoja, no? No, and it's closer hoho. They use the hoho. They use that word also. In
Yeah, yeah.
Khoikhowaba, you say hogon. Same word. In Afrikaans, you say hoga. So I found the same words were used in various languages. So it showed there was contact. There was an early contact,
Yeah,
and there was a residue, a rubbing of salt, something rubbed off
yeah.
on people. And there was actually quite
Because,
something quite. I want to just finish this one
yeah,
more last
finish,
thing.
finish this. Yeah.
There was a word. Now, the word for cow, the word is in Como, in Xhosa, and Goma.
This cow. Yeah.
Yes, cow, Goma for cow. Now, that same word is found in India and some Indian dialects for the same thing, for cow. So it was something that I found was was for me another way because the same word is used for the same thing. It shows for myself a contact somehow. There must have been contact, however, for that thought or for that concept to be shared. So
Mm,
this is all part of of um, of this actually is just extended part of my research to show this whole entanglement, the linguistic entanglement and cultural entanglement that is in South Africa and also globally. There are moments of connection.
mm,
So a lot of the work is peering into that entanglement, that close connectiveness of
mm,
languages. Because language is often seen as like, but I like the idea of language families. You
mm,
know, like a family, and then you have distant cousins and like more
yes,
close
my
cousins.
the cousin of my cousin. Yeah.
So that's how I started seeing languages as
Yeah.
actually they're all as a web of language families that's
Yeah.
connected with each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So I lived in Taiwan for 2 years, and I know Taiwanese has seven tones as well, but Mandarin has five. And what you said earlier reminded me because you can take the word war, which is war, but you can say war, 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 war. And each time it has a different meaning. I remember when I once people asked me what is my favorite food in Mandarin, I said, "Wo shi bu shi huan che baozi," and they burst out laughing. So I thought I'm saying I love eating baozi. Bao means closed, and zi is vegetables. I love eating those buns with the vegetables inside. But I didn't say baozi. I said baozi. You know, I still can't hear the difference. And I actually said, I love eating newspaper,
Wow.
which for me was so funny because newspaper is also the carrier of words. And for me, words and language is part of the purpose of my life, you know, honoring the languages of the people and honoring the people of the languages. So the two things are so entwined. But I know, you know, I feel I can talk to you forever, Bradley. Um, I just want you to tell me, and maybe this will have to be our last question, but don't you want to speak of your name? Because I know you have, you use another name, and I know you're an activist for, so I know you're an activist for languages and for, but how is this related to your name and your purpose, your passion?
Wow, that's a huge question. I hope I don't take too much time to answer that. But I always ask myself, what's in a name? And I actually want to write a book with that with a phrase like that. But what's in a name? So definitely, I found there's a whole world in a name that exists within a concept of a name. Even many worlds, multiverse
Mm.
of existences within a name. So for myself, when I came to my first Nama name, when I came to the Nama people, because at the time they saw me as a searcher. I was the one that was looking for answers. I couldn't find the pre-colonial name of Cape Town among people in Cape Town. So I literally went on a journey to look for the name, right? So
In other
so
place.
yeah, so I had to go somewhere and I found the pipe that I spoke to you about earlier. So so the name so then that name was became part of my name. Pipe
Ah,
the
the
Kunga. Now Kuni is Kunga. Kukweb. Now Kukweb is the name that they gave me. Ku Kuro, the walker, the loper. Want hulle het gesê if you didn't as jy nie gegaan het nie, sal jy nooit by die naam afgekom het nie. If you didn't go, you would never find the name or never have experienced uh, the people and so that's it. No, jy's die loper. Nou ander mense het my aan die ander kant, hulle sê vir my die loper is so 'n sleutel wat al die deure oopmaak. So sê nee, loper maak klomp deure oop. So daai konsep van die loper is iets wat nogal by my gebly het. So it's an idea that is actually that's I'm wearing yellow also. Because commonly they a lot of people call me in my community, a lot of people call me die geel ene. 'n geelerige
oh
gelaatstrekke, 'n
yes,
yellow
yes, yes.
complexion,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yellow bone, the yellow
Yeah,
bone is. Because in my family, I'm a little bit, my brother, my sister, I'm the one that came a bit lighter.
yeah.
I'm a yellow bone in my
But you
family.
know that
So
this color that you're wearing, this yellow, is the color of the year of um Pantone's color of the year for this year is yellow and grey. And when I was in Stellenbosch in January, and I had to do a class with the Stellenbosch Academy, and they designers. So I thought, let me work with this yellow because of another reason. It's a long story. And I picked, and this is now interesting for me. I thought, what do I see around me that has both those colors in? And I was in Betty's Bay. I don't know if you know Betty's Bay. Betty's
definitely,
Bay.
yeah, prachtig.
And I'm like, kooigoed.
Yeah, here we go.
And I went
Very good.
and I picked, because I love kooigoed. So it is called impepo, right?
Careful. Yes.
And I picked a whole, for my both all the classes I did, I picked kooigoed. And I took it to the students, and I said to them, okay, so we're starting with research. I'm giving you this. Find out what it is and what you can do with this. And the processes of finding out, and people saying, who knows a botanist? And I'm like, you can call anybody. You can find out anywhere. And then eventually, the many uses of kooigoed. It's part of it's good. It's a medicine, but it's also a medicine to access. It also purifies, and and you can sleep on it, and there's so much of it, and it's in this word kooigoed. And we actually busy talking about your name, and now I'm rudely interrupting you. But koi is obviously also a word that is that carries all these linking, this rubbing of shoulders. What you're saying, die tale slaap saam. The
I like that.
languages are sleeping together,
Beautiful.
with the word kooigoed for me in any case. But please finish the story of your name. Leopard,
Yeah.
searcher.
So yeah, so it's basically all in all, type the Kuninga Kukweb. So it's the yellow walker veiled in the clouds. That's that is what it means. So the idea that there's clouds around with me, and it's interesting that you mentioned Koye Goed because that's something that I
Oh,
always have.
there you have it.
I
Oh,
always have it with
yes.
me. So I
Yes.
always like I often I light this every
Yes.
day. So it's something that I do every day for myself. So the idea of a cloud. So the cloud significance is to me very powerful. That there's always a cloud. So even the name Cape Town or Cape is with a cloud. So the idea of there's a cloud with it, and the idea that I'm I'm creating a cloud. I'm making a
Yes.
cloud. So
Yeah.
the idea of it. So the name Cape the Kunga Kulkweb is something that is connecting me to my space where I am, Cape Town, or actually the place covered in clouds, veiled in clouds. And
Yeah.
then also the name Kurup or Kukweb, the walker, the wanderer, the searcher. That is the name that the Nama people, the first name that they gave me when I came there. And Rula, I'll be honest with you, when I got there, I was I went through a phase, Rula, that I didn't want to wear shoes. It was a personal experience for me. I felt no, I need to connect with the earth, you
Mm.
know. So I literally stopped wearing suits for 2 3 years almost. So when I came there, it was in that time when I wasn't wearing shoes. So they found that quite profound. So that
Mm.
was also tied into that you're walking barefoot because you know this ground is
It is
special
holy.
ground. It's
Mm.
holy ground. So that was also an extension of that whole theme of the loper. I look
Mm.
gaaf, want die grond is special, is heilig.
Mm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
significant, it's sacred land. Because this is sacred land. This is the birthplace of all humanity. My
Mm.
thinking went on like on a very vast way to say like this is the cradle of humankind, yes. So
Mhm.
from here, so I always told people that was visiting Cape Town and stuff like that, welcome back home because this is your your ancestors
Mm.
recently left, and you just returning home.
Mm.
So yeah, so my name Kukai Kukunga Kukweb is really that is the yellow walker, the yellow searcher, uh,
Mm.
veiled in a cloud, veiled in a
Mm.
cloud. So yeah, that it ties in like something that is something from my own family. Because ek gee ene en ek is die loper want ek gaan soek en toe vind ek die naam van die plek waar ek gebore is.
Mm.
Okay. So it ties in a lot
Oh,
of
it's
a lot of moments
beautiful.
in my life. Yeah.
It's a
So yeah,
so
that's something. My English
I
name is Bradley, which is something else. And I was like, I actually call it my slave name, to be honest with you. I
yes.
call it a slave name because it's connected to another history, because it's English. It's actually, I went into the research about Bradley, and it's connected with the word bard. And bard is an old storyteller. Bard
Oh
is an old
yes.
storyteller,
Yeah.
so it's connected to that word. So I thought, oh, maybe there's something because in some ways I'm telling stories and
Yes.
retelling old stories. That's what I'm
Ah.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Ach, no, Bradley, this was I wish I can pronounce your name, but I will call you um die loper wat wat die wolke betree. Um the one who walks, who can walk on clouds as well, because your thoughts and your passion and the purpose, the way you're speaking about um, the languages and the way we can rub shoulders, and here it is over the internet that we can do this, and I can smell the koi goed that you're burning there, and I inhale the the health, and let's clean the space of our words and our languages so that we can all connect, because essentially, for I think what you're saying is that we are more the same than what we are different, and the language is showing us that. and we are charged to keep languages alive because
Oh,
that's how
wow.
we keep the people alive.
That's so beautiful. I couldn't have thought of it. And I used to say, Rula, humanity will hold us accountable if we do nothing in our lifetimes,
Mm,
while we just were spectators of such a valuable attribute to humanity, like a language, slips through
mm,
our fingers in our lifetimes. The future generations will hold us accountable to say,
absolutely.
what did that generation do? What did they do? They just watched such a precious treasure slip through
Yeah.
their fingers. So
Yeah.
that's for me also part of the fire that's within me, the tray, because ons kan net niks doen nie. We have to do something about it. And for me
Mm,
also, I started first. I was probing government, the PANSAB, the Pan South African Language Board, all these entities mandated to help with the languages. I went that route, and I realized there's other routes that can also be
yes.
followed, and I found a lot more progress in those other avenues. So
Yeah.
there's a community avenue, and you know, I've done the language in my own community with children, and often when I'm standing in front of my house, a child walks past me and say, "Klein says," and greets me in the language, and I feel like, oh my goodness, that's a powerful moment there, when someone is greeting me in the language Klein says. Then there's something that happens to me. So in some ways, definitely, we need the world to show interest in this language families, because these language families is connecting us to the oldest human thought.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really amazing writing. There was one writer that I discovered, and I know I'm talking a lot here, but Theophilus Hahn wrote a book in 1881. You're welcome to go into it. uh, the Supreme Being of the Khoikhoi, Tsuklam. So that book, there's I found some
I will look
powerful
for
things
it.
there.
Yeah.
And that book, really, it's for me at the time, because before then, Europe was disinterested with the languages,
Mm.
because for them it sounded like the clucking of hens and the gabbling of
Yeah.
turkeys sound like animal sounds.
Mm.
So here, and then another group of uh, philologists or linguists came, and they said, no, but let's go into their language. And there's one guy, Theophilus Hahn. He eventually learned Nama, could speak Nama fluent, and then he was like, this language have high constituents. Even it's a highly developed language,
Mm, it is.
because it's been around for so long. The humans developed it in such a way intergenerationally over such a long period of time,
Mm,
that it has such constituents, like a very high level of
mm,
constituents. There's amazing aspects within the language, and for
yeah.
me, as I'm still learning, I feel that you never stop learning in life. You have
Yes.
to learn. So there is so much, and I would really want to encourage people to just to probe into this language families of the
Yeah.
Khoikhoi and the San
Yeah.
communities, because even like the sounds. Now, this is something that I was also peering into. The sounds were mimicking natural sounds. Like there's a click. Now, there's three clicks that is a closer people also closer speak.
Uh-huh.
Uh, no, those three. But
Yeah.
there's a fourth click in quick of they call it the water click. So it's because it sounds like water dripping on a hard surface. If you have a tap that's slightly open and it's dripping water,
Yeah. Yeah.
that sound, yeah. So when that open, I'm like, oh, the water click. So it linked to sounds in nature. So I created
Yes.
this whole thinking around the crackling of the fire
Yes.
when you bang rocks together, when rocks fall. Even if you hear a woodpecker pecking away on a piece of wood, you hear that sound, and that is the
Yes.
sound of nature. It's the sounds of nature. So humanity were very close with nature, and
Uh,
and through that closeness, the sounds in the environment was absorbed in the everyday expression. So I find that very Chomsky. Noel Chomsky says that
yes.
the Khoi and the San communities have the oldest languages in the world.
Uh-huh.
So I found that was
Absolutely.
something powerful.
Yeah. So tell me, how do I say donkey thank you in Kuku
But
Kuwap. Yeah,
baie maklik. There's even two ways to say. You can say gangans.
Gangangs,
Gangans means thank you, or you can say ayos.
Ayos,
Ayos. Ayos
Ayos.
also
That's
means thank you.
beautiful.
And if we say K gangans, it means thank you very much. Or
Kay
K
Gang,
ayos,
Kay
meaning
Ayos, Kay
yeah.
Gangangs. So I want to say to you, Kay Gangangs, thank you very, very much. This was I can't wait so that I can come to Cape Town so that we can sit and share some koi goed and speak to one another. But Bradley, this story you've told, this inviting us into your world and into the language. I have to say, Kay Gangangs for that.
And I would say in response to you, I say ayosatama tikwetse ti horebge. And I'm saying the thank is not necessarily it was my wish. I say
Oh,
my mens, it was my veins.
was my veins. Dis
It was
baie
my veins.
mooi.
Gangans, gangans.
Baie, baie,
If I
baie
can just
dankie.
say something at the end in the language, and I'll translate it for you afterwards.
Please.
Hutse, way ida, hauba sida kumisa. Hey Gangans. And I'm saying, Creator, help us to unite for our heritage. And this heritage is something that we all share as people living in this part of the world, in South Africa. So I still see in future generations, they're actually giving a true identity to the geographical placing on the continent by giving it a real name. Because I feel like
Yes.
we're nameless. We just echoing a placing on a continent. So in
Yes.
time, I feel there is still growing need. We have a lot of creative thoughts. There was even older names like Azania and all of that that was
Mhm.
used. So I see that as really progressive and as a part of the decolonial experience, as part of the colonializing today, and also
Mm.
ridding ourselves from the very painful past.
Yes, absolutely. Kay Gangangs.
Kaisa Kure, go well.
Go
Kaisa
well, God
Kure,
bless. Thank you so
Angan,
much. Bye
Angan.
bye. Uh, you're recording. I want to stop the recording and I don't know how to. Uh,
There's a three buttons somewhere. The three buttons in a row.
you see, this
The three
language
buttons.
of the technology, I'm not so good with it. Yes, stop recording.